Weird countries are shrinking. Weird standing for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. So basically, Western countries are completely shrinking. Their birth rates are declining year over year. In fact, South Korea has the lowest birth rate ever, with less than one child per woman. That's not population decline, that is population collapse. As someone who is dedicated my entire life to my own family, raising my 5 children, but also to helping thousands of parents around the world find meaning and pursuit in family life, I find this trend both fascinating, but also a little bit sad or concerning. And I'd like to figure it out and dive deeper and understand why. So today, I'm going to share 5 reasons people in the West are opting out of having children, and they're not the typical ones that you might have heard. Welcome back to Hi Fam. I'm Avital. I'm the mother of 5. I'm the founder of Hi Fam, and I'm here to help you to build a strong family culture. Now, one of the things we discuss a little bit less often here on the channel is how it's really hard to build a strong family culture if you are in an anti-natalist environment. If the people around you don't love children, don't have children, if families are shrinking in sizes and there's fewer kids per family, there are fewer kids on the street, there are fewer cousins and fewer kids in the environment in general. If parenthood is kind of invisible and you don't see moms, out and about in the wild, then it becomes much harder to build a strong family culture because you're not seeing it actually play out in front of you. You're not seeing good role models. It's not being normalized. And in some cultures, because of that massive decline, it's actually being almost stigmatized. Children are now seen as a nuisance, as a mischief, as maybe to be seen and not heard. I was always shocked in the States when I came across a restaurant that didn't allow kids in. There was this sense that children are maybe an indulgence of their parents, but not a treasure for our entire society and culture. Before I say some of the reasons that I think people are opting out of having children, I want to say the one big glaring elephant in the room reason that I think is not true. The reason that people often state for not having children is money. People often say it's about money. When couples are polled, when women are asked, they often talk about not being able to afford the housing that they want, about inflation, about recession, about the declining job market, about economic instability, about their desire to provide for their children things that they themselves didn't have. But the truth is that the research and the numbers just don't bear this out. Whilst I know all too well how having kids is expensive and can feel prohibitive if you don't have the funds, the truth is that if we just look at the pure facts, money is not what stops people from having children. The fact is that in almost every country, as soon as people become more educated, wealthier, and urbanized, that's actually when fertility declines. In other words, the more money and prosperity, the fewer children. And some of the highest income nations like South Korea, Japan, Germany actually suffer from the lowest birth rates despite having generous welfare and child benefit systems. Even within countries, it's often the most affluent and educated echelons that tend to have fewer children, not more. So in fact, the richer the nation, the fewer the babies. It almost doesn't seem to make sense, right? I mean, it's true, having babies takes up a lot of resources. It's not like it used to be that these were more work hands on the farm. Now we have to pay for their education, for their clothes, have maybe bigger housing, and take a hit to our own careers through maternity leave or shorter work days so that we can be parents to these children. And then we have to worry about their future and about the economics of it all. Children are really expensive. And yet, the more money people have, the less kids they have. So something here isn't adding up. Well, I think the missing piece in this equation, and something that I think many governments are missing, is that having money, having affluence, prosperity itself can actually change our values. The money changes how we see the world and what our values are, not just our budgets. Typically, prosperity actually shifts culture towards individualism, towards self-expression, towards delayed marriage, delayed family, towards career prioritization, which of course is a chicken and egg situation because career prioritization is what made that particular place prosperous to begin with, or that individual. And it also shifts our lifestyle expectations. When you have more budget, often the goalposts move of what you expect to have in your life. Maybe fancier vacations or nicer housing or better clothes. And so as your budget enlarges, so do your expenses if your lifestyle is keeping up. All of this can often just make parenting feel like a burden, so that when you're comfortable, kids can sometimes feel optional. However, and perhaps paradoxically, when you're stretched, they can feel essential. So the truth is that money does matter, but not in the way that we typically think. People feel financially insecure due to rising lifestyle standards, due to comparison culture. And the real poverty isn't the driver, because poorer countries and poorer populations and poorer individuals actually very often have many more children. So the bottom line is that people blame their wallets, but really it's often about their worldview. And that's why in today's video, I want to dive into worldview, because that is what really does shape whether or not you're in a pronatal society or a declining one. So what is causing these shrinking families in the West and increasingly in East Asia as well? Well, it's a shift in our values. What values have been on the rise over the last few decades? Let's dive into 5 of them that have kind of come into a head-on collision with those traditional family values that were driving people to embark on motherhood and fatherhood. Number 1 is the rise in freedom as the ultimate goal. Modern culture prizes limitless choice, personal autonomy, and non-attachment. We really idolize people like Batman and Superman, these lone wolves, these solo actors. And in the West, we have the myth of the self-made man, this idea that people are silos, worlds unto themselves, and they can build the future of their dreams on their own and without attachment to other people. It's all about that ultimate freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. Sometimes it veers into really dark and ugly places like instant gratification, selfishness, greediness, and even narcissism and cultural narcissism, as we sometimes see. But this idea that freedom is the ultimate goal, that individualism is what matters. And I agree, we should judge people as individuals. I think people shouldn't be judged on their group identities. I think it's really important that we allow for individual freedoms and that we protect individual rights. These are things that I absolutely love about Western culture. But notice how when that goes too far, things like community, things like family, and things like parenthood, by contrast, which require sacrifice, permanence, constraint, giving, right? Seeing the other person and being part of a group, they can sometimes feel incompatible with today's definition of what a good life is. Basically, anything that limits your horizons is now perceived as a threat. And trust, nothing limits you like a baby. Number 2, and immediately related to the pursuit of freedom, is the pursuit of self-actualization as an individual. It's the idea that we actualize only on our own terms, this self-made man myth that I mentioned, not in relational terms. So the kind of secret dormant narrative here is the idea that fulfillment comes from personal growth, from self-love, from individual career success, and from my curated experiences, my solo travel, my hobbies, my books that I read, my, adventures that I go on, the skills that I develop, the sourdough that I make. But it's all about my personal skills and experiences and individual successes, not from duty or from service or from family. In other words, that individualistic pursuit of freedom that we mentioned in point number 1 must be fulfilled on my own, but not in relation to others. Notice how we don't give as much prestige or admiration to people who create things in a group, to team effort, to maybe relational effort and success. Someone who maybe lasts in a marriage for, 50 years is not as hailed in our culture, on our, Oprah's must-read book list and in Hollywood, as someone who cuts all ties, severs all commitment, and goes off to do it on their own. That solo adventurer, that's the person who we look up to. And the truth is that because we hold those values, motherhood and fatherhood are often actually illustrated and portrayed as identity erasing. Like we lose ourselves in motherhood. Like who are we anymore if we're parents now? Like now myself is sacrificed because I have children, right? And I think that it's actually identity forming. So parenting is not seen as a path to oneself, as a path to self-actualize, or as a route to certain freedoms, but rather it's seen as a detour from it. Number 3 is the rise of the extended adolescence and our failure to launch. These are the lifestyle-first norms, the self-indulgence, the perhaps social media-ready highlight reel image and self-branding that our current culture adheres to. Marriage and family used to be milestones of adulthood. You maybe weren't even considered a full grown-up until you had settled down, found yourself a life partner, and procreated. But now, career, travel, personal branding, our lifestyles, all of those things are coming first. Those are the milestones that are seen as critical. Those are the bucket list moments in today's culture. It's all about that individual seeking their freedom, not in relation to others and not through self-sacrifice, but rather through self-expression and self-actualization and personal branding and going on these adventures that are all kind of markings that used to be associated with being young and carefree, being adolescent or a young adult, right? Going off trekking or pursuing, side hustles. Those were things that you did before you settled down and built your kind of life, right? But now that's seen as being boxed in, as being weighted down by commitments. Why would one even do that? And the whole point of your life in your 20s and in your 30s is to build yourself, to heal yourself, to love yourself, to learn yourself, to explore the world, to enjoy yourself, to seek pleasure, to seek fun, to seek out experiences. And children are now viewed as something that maybe you add on later, but something that would limit all of that personal freedom, personal individualization, and that kind of extended adventure, that lifestyle first norms. Children are an impediment to the curated, edited, maybe produced lifestyle that you would want to seek out and explore, at least first. Quick pause. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you really wanted your partner? Not checked the box, not just cuddled. I mean, felt something. If it's been a while since butterflies and tingles, or even forever, that does not mean that your marriage is broken. It just means that at the moment, the desire is offline. And that's exactly what I help women rebuild inside Desire Lab. It's my ongoing membership that helps you to reconnect with polarity, chemistry, and attraction. No, you don't need to spend big bucks on lingerie, although you're welcome to. You need tools, mindset shifts, and reframes. Why? Because a lot of the noise in culture out there is actually making women like you and me feel resentful or even repulsed by our husbands. I'm going to train your eyes to see those messages for what they are, to detect them, to reject them, and to replace them with the types of thinking that's going to create chemistry, spark desire, and bring back those butterflies and tingles so that you can feel the love and romance that you seek, deserve, and want. And the best part is that when desire grows, everything else in a relationship gets easier. When you have great chemistry, you are going to find that fights about finances or talks about schedules or disagreements about co-parenting just shrink away. Let's put it this way, desire does the heavy lifting. When desire is high, conflict is low. So check out Desire Lab at highfam.com/Desire Lab or find the link somewhere around this video. If you're ready to really want your partner again, we can make that happen. See you on the inside. Let's get back to the video now. Number 4 is therapy culture. And this is all about the fear of traumatizing a child, or the fear that I myself am too damaged, I can't overcome my own childhood, I wouldn't be able to handle the anxiety, I have anxiety, and therefore I can't take on more responsibilities. It's a generalized fragilization of us as adults. Like young people today often view themselves as incapable, as people who don't have capacity to take on care for another individual. They are overly aware and overly alerted by the potential things that could go wrong, whether it's physical and more often than not, emotional safety that they need to offer to their child. And they're actually trained to see parenting as a minefield of potential harm that they themselves will inflict on their child. There's this overall sense of doom, of gloom, of incapability, the sense that perhaps bringing children into the world in and of itself is an ecological disaster, unsustainable, irresponsible, that I, as an individual, am not fully grown, fully healed, fully developed, that I'm not ready. And you can watch my video all about readiness and how this day and age, our Gen Z, rising generation, often just don't feel ready to take on responsibilities. And they view responsibilities as a mental health obstacle, where so often actually responsibilities are a mental health builder. They actually are a protectant, but they are eschewing responsibility because they see it as potentially repeating generational trauma, the fear of not being a perfect parent, right? And that causes many of them to avoid having children altogether. Number 5, parenthood is framed as being lame. Parenthood is not framed as something aspirational, as something meaningful, as something sacred, as it has been in days gone by. In mainstream media, on social media, parenthood is often framed as boring, as stressful. It's portrayed as even soul-killing, as a waste of your potential. In fact, the early feminist writers actually told, feminists that we shouldn't be allowing women to pursue motherhood at all, because if they did that, they would waste their potential and they wouldn't be seeking out their full fulfillment in their careers. When you spend decades educating women that it's their jobs that are going to give them life satisfaction, meaning, value, a paycheck, prestige, and esteem, but that motherhood is a complete waste of their time, it's servitude, and it's self-sacrifice in the worst possible way, it's no wonder that women today have bought that entire story hook, line, and sinker. We've taught ourselves that travel, that work and career, that solo wellness journeys are idealized. But we've lost the cultural script that presents raising a family as worthy, as meaningful, as maybe the most meaningful life project most of us will ever embark on. If you open your eyes to it, you'll see that many celebrities will talk about motherhood always in terms of victimhood, always in terms of something that is difficult. We don't talk enough about how difficult it is, about how hard it is, about how lonely it is, about how painful it is, about how it damages your body and your marriage and your esteem and your confidence and all sorts of things that it damages and takes away from your ability to be yourself. The general narrative that you'll see in movies, that you'll see in books, in novels, in social media, is often going to be about the hardship of motherhood. And all of that stands, it's all fair, it's all true to an extent. But what you won't see is the deep meaning that one can get from it. And in a world, especially in these weird countries where we're actually going through a crisis of meaning, where many people are finding it very difficult to find a reason to get up in the morning, something to live for, something to spend themselves on. It's interesting that we've stopped sharing the very real, very clear, very powerful meaning that one can gain by raising a family, the immense sense of purpose and direction and impact that one's having on the world simply by bringing children into it and raising them. When you mock parenting and you glorify independence and freedom, I guess we shouldn't be surprised that people stop having kids. There are many other reasons that people don't have kids. This is a multifactorial issue that's influenced by many different things, from the economic and all the way through to the deep, dark psychological recesses of our hearts and souls. But because I care about mindset and about culture, I actually want to address these points because I think it's really helpful for those of us who are already parents and those of us who are kid curious to get a perhaps more nuanced and hopefully slightly wiser, deeper read on these cultural values. So let's go. Number 1 was freedom. We said that people just want to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. But what this piece is missing is whilst individual liberty and freedom to pursue your happiness is a top value, and I totally agree with it, what we need to know is that constraints and commitments actually can be incredibly liberating. Overwhelm, analysis paralysis, decision fatigue, choice paralysis. These are actually what we come up against when you leave all your freedoms open all the time, all the roads open to you for all of eternity. You don't come up against a feeling of fulfillment and meaning if you just keep leaving all your doors open. If you don't commit to a life partner because there might be 100 other potential fish in the sea. If you don't decide to embark on this particular career and deepen your skills, your insights, and your experience, then you stay kind of a jack of all trades and master of none and shallow in your experience and in your impact. And if you don't commit to serving and growing and raising and loving another human being in the form of your child, then you're going to find that, yes, you're very free. But the question is then, free to do what? How do you then infuse a sense of meaning and purpose and passion and drive into your life if you haven't committed to something? And it doesn't have to be to children, but it does have to be to something. I think that the truth is that leaving too many doors open and too much freedom for too long, like into adulthood, into our 20s and then into our 30s and beyond, can actually leave us feeling lost, feeling empty, feeling directionless. Whereas when you commit to some things, when you commit to a partner, when you commit to a child, for example, it actually allows you a lot of freedom in other areas of your life. You kind of feel like, okay, I've got the love part locked down. I've got the identity and belonging part locked down. I've really answered my need for human connection, for human belonging, for human love in a very profound way. And now I can be free to experiment in these, lesser areas of my life, maybe with my fashion choices, with the content that I create, within my friendships, within my career, in other areas, the dishes that I make for dinner. There's kind of a certain freedom in the rules, right? When you constrain creative people, for example, they often come up with much more creative solutions, much more beautiful, interesting solutions because constraints actually create creativity. Constraints actually allow for freedom to a certain extent. So whilst I think freedom is important, I'm not sure it's the ultimate good. I think we also gain freedom through setting down certain decisions in stone. Think about it a little bit like the walled garden. When you have a walled garden, you have constraints, you have walls, you have literal boundaries and barriers that are up. But within that, it creates a sense of safety and freedom. That's where you're at liberty. That's where you are really able to run loose and wild because you've created a container for that freedom. I think family offers us the ultimate container for freedom. It offers us a real, checking of the boxes of some profound, columns of human experience and existence, like having people to love, having people we're committed to, having lifelong relationships. Family gives us that. Children give us that. They ground us. They force us to be in a time and in a place and to actually give of ourselves. And that leads me to point number 2, individualism. Self-actualization in our culture is defined on the individual level, right? We talked about the myth of the solo entrepreneur, that, self-made person, the Batmans and the Supermans of the world. But the truth is that I think that much more profound self-actualization comes in relationship to others. Even within companies where you think there's a star CEO, this brilliant genius entrepreneur, you'll find that it's actually their relationships with others, their synchronicities with others, their ability to maybe work as a team, to bounce ideas off each other, to brainstorm, to improve each other, to offer constructive criticism and feedback, and to ping pong is what often creates the best results. I don't know of any story of someone who just went it alone and became incredible. Usually there's someone there by their side. It's it's the Robin to the Batman. It's their sidekick. It's their life partner. It's the people who love them. It's the people who support them. It's the people on their team. It's their co-founder who is perhaps more in the shadows and less on the big screen, but is actually serving a profound role in their life and in their individual self-actualization. I can tell you this as someone who has a very meaningful career. I love what I do for work, and it brings me immense, joy and satisfaction, fulfillment and purpose, and actually aligns really well with my values. It can never compete with my family for, the potential of self-actualization. Being a mother and a wife, the way that I can nurture my children, give to them, shape them, raise them, is a project that, is tenfold more meaningful, more exciting, stretches me more, brings out more from me, forces me into, higher and higher levels of myself to become a better role model, to become a better example to them, to be more self-regulated, to be more mature, to be more emotionally available and wise than any job ever could. Even the job that I have, which is all about, coaching and parenting and marriage and all of that. When people say I've lost my identity to motherhood, I know what they mean. They mean that all of my previous hobbies and interests, the intellectual conversations I used to hold, my politics, my career, it's all falling by the wayside to motherhood. And I get that feeling. And it's not a good feeling. And there's no reason for you to not maintain and nurture those sides of your identity. And I absolutely teach that. However, I also want to point out that motherhood itself is a very illustrious, prestigious, important, meaningful identity. How we show up to parenthood can and should, in my opinion, become the most meaningful project of our lives. That's where we bring out the most interesting, intriguing, important, meaningful parts of ourselves. And that's where our work matters most. This is where you'll have the biggest impact on the future. Many of us are raising our children to change the world. And this seems like a bit of a, unrealistic rally cry because most people don't change the world in some profound way. Most people don't go down in history. Most people aren't going to have a massive impact. But if you're a parent, then by definition, you are shaping the future. You are having an impact on what the future holds because you're raising the next generation. And so this is almost like a fast track. It's like a life hack to living a life that has that purpose and that meaning because you're building something that lasts. Number 3 was that extended adolescence, that need to find myself first before I can raise someone else, right? The feeling like I'm not ready to take on responsibility for others. I just want to solo travel and explore myself and heal myself. And this narcissistic focus on myself as the main project of my life, seeking pleasure, and growing and evolving and developing, misses the fact that actually parenthood is one of the most profound, fast track, all-encompassing, 24/7, powerful and lifelong ways to develop yourself. It's one of the most useful and real and authentic and deep and viable paths to self-growth and development. Now, when it comes to lifestyle and travel, I just want to say, I travel with my kids and I think I live a beautiful lifestyle. I love my lifestyle. I love, enjoying foods and community and experiences and travel. And you can do that alongside having children. It is entirely possible. Yes, you're going to need the budget for it. And yes, you might need to work a little harder to fit all the pieces in and to make it work. And no, you might not do it when they're very young. You might do it a few years into parenting and you might do it with your children or without your children. But there are ways of having beautiful, incredible, fulfilling, meaningful, fun, lifestyles, even whilst raising children. But if you're looking for that evolution, for that enlightenment, for that, process of self-healing and self-love, that's one of the things that you could do whilst and with and together and alongside raising children, because having a child will crack you open like nothing else, for better or for worse. It will bring out in you all the things that you need to work on immediately. You're going to get triggered and you're going to get activated and you're going to have to learn to multitask and to juggle and to identity switch and to do all sorts of things that I don't know if you could ever get that, in a silent retreat in India. Like, I often think it must be so easy to meditate when you're in a monastery. I want to see you do that raising toddlers. That's where the real mental strength and mental toughness develops. That's where your identity is stretched, your skills are stretched. That's where you really grow. And the 5th one was that parenting is framed as lame, that it's framed as something that isn't aspirational or sacred, but something that's boring, that's stressful, that's soul-killing, that's identity-stealing. And for this one, I just want to say, I would look at it so differently. I think we had this one so much more correctly, a few maybe decades or a generation ago, where we saw family as something sacred, as a good and viable path to leading a good life. I'm not saying you can't lead a good life without having a family. Of course you can. But I'm saying that this is a really kind of proven system to leading a meaningful life. Now, you can also lead a really bad life and raise kids. You could be an abusive or terrible parent. You could raise kids in a horrible way, and that would be horrible, of course. But for those of us who are seeking a way of leading a meaningful life, of finding a real powerful love, a spiritual practice, a deep sense of purpose and drive, a real reason to get up in the morning, I think it's going to be really hard to find something as worthy and as meaningful as your family as a life project. I know that it can be really attractive or seductive to think, oh, it's going to be my YouTube channel. It's going to be my Instagram. It's going to be my designs or my ideas or the things that I write, that my career or my job is somehow going to give me that satisfaction that I seek in my life. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've got your shelter and your food and your safety taken care of. Now you're looking for self-actualization. And I want to put it to you, whether you're a parent yet or not, that few and far between are the opportunities for self-actualization such that parenting offers us. Parenting offers us a true, worthy pursuit to really show up for someone else and to love someone else even more than we love ourselves. It pulls us out of that narcissistic mindset. It takes us away from the insecurity, the inhibition, the navel gazing, the me focus. It takes us out of that kind of selfie generation mindset and into the mindset of caring for someone else. Because once you're a parent, the only thing that needs to matter to you above all is the goodness of the child. What is good for my child? What is good for your child is for you to be happy, healthy, well-rounded, stable. What is good for your child is for you to be in a loving, passionate, stable marriage to their parent. What is good for your child is to have meaningful, predictable routines, rhythms, and rituals. What is good for your child is for you to be surrounded by incredible community and deep friendships, having a healthy lifestyle, pursuing good goals with good values, being clear on who you are and what your identity is. All of these things are good for children, and therefore it's going to call you into that higher pursuit in a way that nothing else can. So when I look around at the shrinkage of the Western world, which I admire and love so much, and I'm so sad to see that people are opting out of this human experience, this raw, authentic, real, lifelong human experience, I have to point to these particular values that I think are guiding them away, but in my opinion, are misguiding them away. And I think it's, in a way, a little bit of a mission that us parents need to go on, which is to show transparently and authentically and without whitewashing it, but the truth about parenting, which is sure, it can be expensive, it could be exhausting, it can be depleting. You can have postpartum depression, you can have trouble getting your body back after birth, kids can have tantrums and meltdowns, they can sneak and steal, lots of things to complain about for sure. But there's also I think, very real and profound truth that most parents will sign off on, which is that parenting is the most meaningful project of our lives. Raising the next generation brings parents a level of love, of hope, and of resilience that they could never dare to ask for through another route. It can bring out the worst in us, it's true, but it can also have the potential to bring out the very best in us in a way that nothing else can. If you like this video and you'd like more like it, then please share it with a friend. Make sure that you are subscribed, hit the notification bell, slam the like button, do all the things, and of course, leave me your comment below. Are you a parent yet? Do you want to be a parent? Are you also concerned about the shrinking birth rates? What do you think is the best advertisement for parenting? Is it the most meaningful project of your life? Let me know below what you feel, what you think. I know there is a very wide range of very controversial views on this subject, and I'd love to hear yours as long as you keep it respectful. Keep on living that high fam life, and I'll see you in the next video.